There's a particular kind of horror in realizing you've entered the domain of a predator. I think of Anthony White, a 22-year-old marine biology student on Surf Beach, California. He was so focused on finding the perfect wave that he ignored the warning signs, the unusual silence, the missing seals. He was sitting on his board, legs dangling in the water, unknowingly waiting to be attacked by a great white shark. The summer of 2014 had brought perfect weather to that stretch of coastline. Sunshine filtered through the morning mist, painting golden patterns in the glassy ocean surface. Anthony's passion for surfing was exactly what you'd expect from a California marine biology student. He'd been surfing for 8 years, and his friends described him as the perfect mix of fearless adventure and deep respect for ocean life. He was known for his infectious enthusiasm and tendency to seek out remote breaks, but he was also methodical, always researching surf spots and ocean conditions before paddling out. They had spent weeks planning this solo dawn patrol session. This morning adventure was meant to be the perfect combination of his two passions, surfing and marine biology. The college student had arrived at Surf Beach just as the sun was rising, spending his first hour checking conditions and waxing his board at the remote location. But Anthony had been restless, telling other early morning surfers that the real waves were beyond the crowded spots, despite the area being adjacent to a massive seal rookery at Point Conception. On that fateful morning, Anthony set out early, carrying his 6'2" shortboard and minimal safety gear. He had signed the beach access log, indicating he planned to surf the main break. But somewhere along the way, Anthony spotted what looked like perfect waves breaking further offshore. Despite the prominent warning signs about marine life in the area, Anthony paddled out about 850 yards from shore to position himself in the lineup. The area was beautiful, too beautiful to resist, with seals barking in the distance and crystal clear water revealing the sandy bottom below. While setting up for the perfect wave, Anthony suddenly noticed something that should have alarmed him. The water was unusually quiet, with no other surfers in sight, and the seals had stopped their constant chatter. But he was so focused on catching the wave of the day that he ignored these warning signs. Finally, Anthony had positioned himself perfectly in the lineup and was sitting on his board, legs dangling in the water. Then, suddenly, a terrifying silence fell over the ocean. Out of nowhere, there it was, a massive great white shark emerging from the depths, seemingly from 20 feet below where Anthony was sitting. What Anthony didn't realize was that he had entered the domain of one of nature's most efficient predators. Great whites are living fossils that have remained virtually unchanged for millions of years. Their torpedo-shaped bodies are perfectly designed for explosive attacks. These apex predators can detect blood from up to 500 yards away and sense the electrical impulses of a beating heart from several meters distance. When hunting, great whites approach from the depths in explosive bursts of speed, sometimes exceeding 35 miles per hour, using the element of surprise to deliver devastating attacks with bite forces reaching up to 4,000 pounds per square inch. Anthony reacted instantly, but there was nowhere to run. The massive predator struck from directly below, covering the distance between them in a split second. Anthony managed to see the shark's massive form just before impact, but the attack came with such explosive force that both he and his surfboard were launched into the air. The sound of Anthony's screams cut through the morning silence as the shark's jaws clamped down on his torso. He fought desperately, punching at the predator's snout as it held him in its powerful grip. The massive head was shaking violently as razor-sharp teeth sliced through flesh and bone. The great white released Anthony after several seconds, typical behavior for these predators when encountering unfamiliar prey. But the damage was already catastrophic. Blood immediately began clouding the pristine water as Anthony, despite his severe injuries, began paddling frantically toward shore on his damaged board. The shark circled below, following the blood trail but maintaining its distance, waiting to see if this strange prey would weaken enough to approach safely. Anthony managed to cover nearly half the distance to shore, his movements becoming weaker and more erratic as blood loss and shock overwhelmed his system. A jogger on the beach heard Anthony's desperate screams and immediately called for help, but the remote location meant rescue was still minutes away. By the time lifeguards arrived, Anthony had disappeared beneath the surface, the ocean swallowing him whole. 2 hours later, Anthony's mangled surfboard washed ashore, bearing the unmistakable crescent-shaped bite marks of a great white shark. The massive gouges told the story of an encounter with one of nature's most efficient predators. Anthony's body was never recovered, despite extensive search efforts. The university established a memorial scholarship in his name, and Surf Beach was temporarily closed while marine biologists studied great white activity in the area. The attack led to enhanced warning systems and additional safety briefings for surfers. As the sun set over the California coastline, the memory of Anthony White served as a stark reminder. I've always been drawn to stories where the beauty of nature masks a lurking danger. The ocean especially holds a particular fascination for me in this regard. It can appear so serene, so inviting, and yet it possesses an unforgiving power. I remember reading about a day that began with perfect fishing conditions in Galveston Bay, Texas. The sky was a brilliant blue. The Gulf Coast breeze was just right. It was September 3rd, 2015. David Walter, a 26-year-old first-generation immigrant, was living the American dream. He'd built a charter fishing business from the ground up. His clients adored him for his enthusiasm and his knack for finding fish. He was known to be careful and methodical, always double-checking his equipment, driven by a desire to give his customers the perfect experience. On that particular morning, he was taking 4 tourists from Dallas out to celebrate a bachelor party, promising them action near the Galveston jetties. They were having a fantastic time, pulling in red snapper and speckled trout, already talking about another trip. David navigated to his favorite spot, a mile offshore where the depth dropped to 25 feet, attracting bait fish and the predators that hunted them. But then, the engine coughed, sputtered, and died. They were adrift in a strong current, heading toward the shipping channel. David quickly diagnosed the problem. A clogged fuel filter, usually a simple fix, but the anchor began to drag. The situation was becoming dangerous. Local charter captains had warned about unusual activity, and the water was murky from recent storms. David had fished those waters for years without incident, and other boats were nearby. He made a fateful decision. He stripped down and dove overboard to reset the anchor, hoping to stabilize the boat while he fixed the engine. He didn't know he was entering the hunting grounds of one of the Gulf's most dangerous predators, the bull shark. Bull sharks are incredibly adaptable, equally at home in salt water and fresh water. They can swim far up rivers and into freshwater lakes, appearing almost anywhere. Their aggressive temperament makes them responsible for more unprovoked attacks on humans than almost any other species. They have a bite force of 1,350 lbs per square inch and electroreceptors that can detect electrical fields from meters away. They employ a relentless bite and release pattern, striking repeatedly until their prey stops moving. David worked underwater, trying to free the stuck anchor, but the current was strong. A 7-foot bull shark had been patrolling the fishing grounds, drawn by the chum slick from David's successful charter. The shark's acute senses detected the electrical fields from David's beating heart and the scent of blood. What happened next was shockingly fast. David never saw the shark coming through the murky water. It struck from behind, its massive jaws clamping down on his leg with crushing force, before releasing and circling for another attack. The impact was so violent that David's clients heard his scream through the water. He fought to reach the surface, but the bull shark continued its relentless assault, tearing away flesh with each bite. Bull sharks rarely give up once committed to an attack. The multiple attacks created a feeding frenzy. The water became a churning mass of blood and violence. David's clients watched in horror, screaming for help and radioing the Coast Guard, but David had already disappeared beneath the surface, overwhelmed by the shark's assault. The Coast Guard arrived nearly an hour later, finding only David's torn shorts floating in blood-stained water. The bull shark had vanished into the murky depths, leaving behind traumatic memories. There's a tale they tell in every boating safety course along the Texas coast, a cautionary story about the Gulf's bull sharks that hunt in murky shallows. Death strikes without warning there, but thousands of miles away, in the crystal-clear waters of Hawaii, another predator has earned an even more terrifying nickname. This story is about the night paradise became a hunting ground for nature's most indiscriminate killer. The evening of April 22, 2016 brought perfect conditions to the remote coastline near Hana, Maui. A gentle trade wind rustled through the palm trees as the sun painted the sky in brilliant tropical colors. Christian Smith, a 24-year-old, couldn't have asked for better conditions for his solo fishing adventure at one of his secret spots along Maui's untouched coastline. Christian embodied the laid-back Hawaiian lifestyle that drew so many to the islands. With his easy smile and encyclopedic knowledge of hidden fishing spots, he'd become a local favorite at the surf shop where he worked. Friends described him as fearless and independent, always venturing to remote locations that other anglers avoided, constantly searching for the perfect fishing experience that only the islands could provide. That evening, Christian loaded his truck with heavy tackle designed for the large predatory fish that hunted Hawaiian waters after dark. The location he'd chosen was breathtakingly beautiful, but completely isolated. A secluded beach accessible only by a rough dirt road winding through dense tropical vegetation. Christian arrived just as darkness was settling over the ocean. The spot was perfect. A protected cove with deep water close to shore and a coral reef that attracted schools of bait fish during night hours. He set up his gear methodically, rigging the heavy equipment he'd need for the monsters that prowled these waters after sunset. As Christian waded into about 6 feet of crystal clear water to cast beyond the reef break, everything seemed perfect. The water was so clear he could see the white sand bottom, even in starlight. He'd already landed 2 nice fish when disaster struck. Moving through the water to reposition for a better cast, Christian's foot slipped on wet volcanic rock. He fell hard against sharp coral formations, opening a deep gash on his leg. Blood immediately began streaming into the pristine water around him. Local Hawaiian fishermen had warned about increased predator activity during night hours, but Christian had fished these waters countless times. What he didn't know was that the remote location had become a hunting ground for one of the ocean's most dangerous predators. As Christian tried to assess his injury in the dim light, he realized the cut was deeper than expected. His splashing and the metallic scent of blood created the perfect storm of stimuli that trigger a predator's hunting instincts. Unknown to Christian, he had attracted the attention of Hawaii's apex predator. Tiger sharks are perfectly adapted for nighttime hunting in both shallow and deep waters, earning the nickname wastebasket of the sea, because they'll eat virtually anything. Their stomachs have contained license plates, tires, and even other sharks. These massive sharks can grow up to 18 feet long and possess an indiscriminate appetite that makes them particularly deadly during nighttime hours when they move into shallow water to hunt. Tiger sharks can detect blood from several hundred yards away, and their lateral line system senses the slightest vibrations in the water, making escape nearly impossible once they lock onto a target. Christian began wading toward shore, but his movements became increasingly erratic as blood loss affected his coordination. The coral cut was more serious than he'd thought, and the metallic scent drifting through the water was like ringing a dinner bell for every predator in the area. The 10-foot tiger shark had been patrolling the reef edge when Christian's blood trail reached its sensitive nostrils. Unlike more cautious reef sharks, tiger sharks are known for their bold, reckless approach to anything in their territory, especially during nighttime hunting hours when they become most active. Christian never saw death coming through the dark water. The attack was sudden and devastating. The tiger shark struck from the side, its massive jaws clamping down on his injured leg with crushing force. The impact knocked Christian off his feet, sending him tumbling in the deeper water. The predator's attack was relentless and indiscriminate. Tiger sharks are known for their tenacious grip, often holding prey while using their muscular bodies to roll and tear. The shark maintained its grip while striking with its powerful tail, creating a whirlpool of violence. What makes tiger shark attacks particularly horrific is their feeding behavior. Once they taste blood, they enter a feeding frenzy, biting repeatedly until prey stops moving. Christian fought desperately, but the predator's grip was unbreakable, and each movement only intensified the attack. In the darkness, I've seen the ocean claim even those who love it most. Christian, for example. His screams on that remote Hawaiian beach, they vanished into the empty coastline. No one there to hear as the tiger shark attacked, its appetite indiscriminate, escape impossible. They found Christian's truck the next morning, his fishing gear still there. But Christian was gone, taken by the very waters that had once brought him so much joy. A massive search followed, helicopters and hundreds of volunteers. 4 days later, they found his body on a beach 8 miles away. The Hawaiian community held a traditional blessing. His surf shop created a memorial fund for ocean safety education. But Hawaii isn't the only place where tiger sharks hunt under darkness. Off the rugged northern California coast, the same species demonstrated that even professionals, watermen who've spent years in those waters, are never truly safe from the ocean's most intelligent predators. November 8, 2017. It was a crisp autumn day at Fort Ross. The morning fog lifted, revealing that dramatic, rocky coastline where the Pacific swells crashed against the ancient sea stacks. Ryan Walsh, 29, couldn't have asked for better diving weather. Calm seas, good visibility. It promised a profitable day, harvesting abalone. Ryan was a commercial abalone diver through and through. His weathered hands and sun-damaged face told the story of 6 years spent in those frigid Pacific waters, free diving to depths that would terrify recreational divers. Friends described him as methodical, safety-conscious, but also driven by a pursuit of the perfect abalone beds hidden in those rocky depths. That morning, Ryan launched his small boat with his dive partner, Marcus, a younger diver who looked up to Ryan as a mentor. They'd worked together for 3 seasons, developing that wordless communication that comes from sharing danger in one of California's most hazardous occupations. Ryan chose a productive rocky reef in about 25 feet of water. The location was challenging, strong currents, kelp forests, and the ever-present danger of entanglement in abandoned fishing nets littering the bottom. As Ryan suited up in his thick wetsuit, he felt that familiar mix of excitement and apprehension. The water was a bone-chilling 55 degrees, but he had built a tolerance over years of expo. His dive bag contained an abalone iron, a measuring gauge, and a collection bag, the tools of his dangerous trade. The first few dives went perfectly. Ryan descended through the kelp canopy to the rocky bottom, where clusters of red abalone clung like living jewels. His experienced eye identified the legal specimens, and his practiced hands pried them loose with surgical precision. But on his 7th dive, disaster struck. Working to free a particularly large abalone, Ryan's fin became entangled in abandoned fishing nets. The nearly invisible monofilament wrapped around his leg like a spider's web, holding him against the rocky bottom as his air supply ran dangerously low. After a desperate struggle, Ryan managed to cut through enough netting to break free. He made an emergency ascent, lungs burning as he fought through the kelp toward the sunlight. When he finally surfaced, he was exhausted, disoriented, and dangerously far from his boat. What Ryan didn't realize was that his distressed movements had attracted the attention of California's apex predator. Great whites are living fossils that have patrolled these waters for millions of years, perfectly adapted to hunt in the kelp forests where seals and sea lions congregate. These massive sharks typically reach 12 to 16 feet and can weigh over 3,000 pounds. Their torpedo-shaped bodies are capable of explosive bursts exceeding 35 miles per hour, bursts that can launch them completely from the water. Their incredible sensory system allows them to detect electrical fields from several meters away and track blood trails from 500 yards. During autumn, mature great whites patrol northern California in greater numbers, following the migration patterns of their preferred prey. These sharks are incredibly intelligent, capable of learning and adapting hunting strategies, making them unpredictable and extremely dangerous to humans who venture into their territory. Marcus, watching from 300 yards away, immediately recognized that something was wrong. Ryan floated motionless at the surface, clearly in distress. Marcus started the engine and raced toward his partner, but the distance seemed impossibly far. The 13-foot great white had been patrolling the kelp beds when it detected Ryan's emergency ascent. The shark's acute senses picked up the electrical impulses from his rapidly beating heart, the scent of abalone in his collection bag, and the erratic movements of a creature in distress. All triggers, activating predatory instincts. Ryan never saw the attack coming. The great white struck from below with devastating force, its massive jaws clamping down on his torso with a bite force reaching 4,000 pounds per square inch, slicing through his wetsuit and into vital organs. The shark's initial bite was exploratory, typical great white behavior with unfamiliar prey, but the damage was already catastrophic. The predator released Ryan and circled back, following the blood. The ocean can turn on you in an instant. I've seen it myself. The shift from serene beauty to sudden terror. I remember reading the report about Ryan, the abalone diver. The image of his screams echoing across the water still haunts me. He'd been diving with his partner when a great white attacked. His wetsuit offered some protection, but the shark's teeth went deep, causing massive internal bleeding. Marcus, his partner, pulled him from the water, but Ryan was fading fast. Despite desperate efforts, he died from blood loss just 20 minutes after the attack. The California abalone diving community was devastated. New safety regulations were implemented, and Marcus became a dive safety instructor. The dive beds at Fort Ross were temporarily closed for biologists to study the great white activity. But while those great whites patrolled the kelp forests of Northern California, hundreds of miles south in Florida, another species was about to turn a spearfishing competition into a nightmare. This time, the attack would unfold in crystal-clear water, where every horrific detail would be visible. August 14, 2013, dawned perfect in Jupiter Inlet, Florida. The morning sun sparkled on the emerald Atlantic waters, creating ideal visibility for the annual South Florida spearfishing tournament. One of the competitors, Alex Paul, a 33-year-old construction foreman from Miami, couldn't have asked for better conditions. He was passionate about spearfishing, spending weekends free diving and honing his skills. That morning, Alex joined 40 other competitors. The target species included cobia, kingfish, and grouper, prized game fish with high point values. Alex and his dive buddy, Carlos, headed to a productive reef in 30 feet of water. The water was exceptionally clear with 80-foot visibility, perfect for spotting prey. For 2 hours, Alex had moderate success, but as the morning progressed, he focused on finding a trophy fish. Then he spotted it, a massive cobia cruising the reef edge, easily 50 pounds and worth maximum tournament points. He hyperventilated to extend his bottom time and dove to intercept the fish. His shot was perfect, striking just behind the gills, but the wounded fish took off for deeper water. In his excitement, Alex became separated from Carlos and the other divers, finding himself alone in an isolated section of the reef. The wounded cobia's struggle created a blood trail as Alex fought to control the powerful fish. When he finally surfaced with his prize, he was bleeding from cuts caused by the sharp fins and exhausted from the battle. The combination of fish blood and human blood, along with the dying cobia's continued struggles, created the perfect stimuli, triggering the predatory instincts of every shark in the vicinity. Alex didn't realize he had attracted one of Florida's most dangerous predators, the bull shark. Bull sharks are perfectly adapted to Florida's warm coastal waters. They can even survive in fresh water. These powerful hunters typically reach 6 to 8 feet and possess an incredible sensory system, allowing them to detect vibrations from struggling fish hundreds of yards away and sense electrical fields from several meters. Unlike other shark species, bull sharks are known for their bold, direct approach to potential food sources, often competing directly with spear fishermen for their catch. A 7-foot bull shark had been patrolling the reef when the scent of blood reached its nostrils from hundreds of yards away. The predator's acute senses detected electrical fields generated by both the struggling fish and Alex's rapidly beating heart. Alex saw the shark approaching. He tried releasing his catch, hoping to distract the predator with the wounded cobia. But bull sharks are opportunistic feeders, and the presence of multiple potential prey only intensified their aggressive behavior. I remember reading the report about Alex, the diver. It was a stark reminder of the power that exists beneath the waves, a power we sometimes forget in our pursuit of understanding the ocean. The attack was swift, brutal. A bull shark, they said, struck directly at him. Massive jaws clamped down on his leg with crushing force. The bite severed major blood vessels, and the predator's characteristic multiple strikes caused massive tissue damage. Alex fought desperately, punching at the shark's snout, trying to reach his dive knife. But the bull shark's aggressive nature meant a continued assault, relentless determination, striking again and again until the water turned crimson. Other tournament divers, alerted by the commotion and the spreading slick of blood, raced toward Alex's location. They found him floating unconscious, his spear gun and the wounded cobia drifting nearby. The bull shark had vanished, leaving behind only devastating evidence of its attack. Despite immediate first aid and a Coast Guard helicopter evacuation, Alex died from massive blood loss during the 40-minute flight to the trauma center. The tournament was canceled, and the spearfishing community mourned one of their most respected members. Alex's death, though tragic, led to enhanced safety protocols in tournaments. They mandated closer proximity to dive buddies, and organizers began providing emergency response training. The association established a memorial fund promoting safer diving practices. I find some solace in knowing that his legacy lives on through these efforts, a reminder to respect the ocean and to protect ourselves in its embrace.